Well, hello again. It's been a great week here at Tree Lady Talks, and I just so love talking to John Parker. We're so excited about arboriculture. In the words of MasterChef that Noel, an ex-chef, really hates, enjoy. Welcome to John Parker, CEO of the Arboricultural Association here in the UK. John is one of the rarefied guests that have been asked back on Tree Lady Talks. So, John, welcome.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm glad I didn't do anything too wrong last time to have been invited back.
Very popular, and you put us on the map, so the podcast map. So thank you so much, John. But John, since we last spoke, you were promoted some time ago now. So tell us about your role, your day-to-day working life as a CEO of the Arboricultural Association.
Yeah, so when we last did a podcast, I was technical director. And then in the summer of 2021, our previous chief executive left and I applied for that job and I was appointed to that job. So since then, my life has been one of spreadsheets and HR and budgets and all that sort of thing, which is exactly why I got into arboriculture in the first place. It's because I love paperwork. So that's what I'm doing now.
Well, do you know what? That doesn't come across. So I know from having been president of the Institute of Chartered Foresters just how much running the organisation needs to be done. And all of that background stuff is absolutely critical to keep things tight and going in the right direction. But our perception is, as a member or from somebody else who might be following the Arboricultural Association, is that a lot of your work is outreach. So whilst it may feel like you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet, what the perception is exactly what it should be. So tell us about some of the outreach that the Arboricultural Association does.
Yeah, we're trying to do a lot more outreach work, really. I think for a long time, the association has quite rightly been very much focused on the members, because obviously that's the bread and butter. That's incredibly important. We're a professional organisation. That's what we need to do. But so often we find ourselves in situations where, we've got tree people talking to tree people about how fantastic trees are. And then we all say, yay, trees, and sort of go home. And that's great. And that's always going to be really important. But we really need to be reaching out to those people who don't know about arboriculture or who care about trees but don't understand tree care. So we're doing a lot of stuff now to try and reach the general public particularly, but also politicians, the media and other sort of areas, just to try and highlight really the importance of arboriculture and to tell people that there is a profession out there. Because as I'm sure we'll touch on as we're having this discussion, the problem that we keep coming back to is that there's not very much awareness of arboriculture, and that's what's holding us back in an awful lot of areas.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, there's a very noisy dog wagging its tail underneath the desk, rattling the wires, listeners. No, that's absolutely right. And I love the video.
We're very excited about the new video. I'll tell you the sort of story behind it, which is that I went to a careers day at a grammar school in Gloucestershire. And it was a really good careers day. They'd invited 3 people to represent sort of underrepresented sectors. So there was me doing arboriculture, there was a chap doing the creative industries, and then there was a lady doing building surveying. And we each had to give a little 5-minute presentation, and it was in front of 150 Year 9 students who we were all sort of trying to compete for their attention as to what our sector had to offer. The creative guy went first. He directed music videos for Lewis Capaldi, so talked a little bit about it, then showed a video, and I was like, oh, that's a bit rubbish because he looks really good. And now I then stood up and talked a bit about trees, usual thing, no notes or props or anything, just talked about why trees were great. And then the lady representing building surveying stood up, and I thought, well, this is going to be easy because surely surveying's a bit rubbish. We can beat this. This is great. She did a very good talk and then showed a little video, and it was a 2-minute video that made surveying look really cool. And I was like, damn it, that's really annoying. So after the event, I found the link to that video and I sent it to our marketing team and basically said, could you please make me one of these for arboriculture? And our marketing manager, Steve, and our assistant, Macy, went away. Macy particularly produced it. She went away for a couple of months and came back and said, what about this? And gave me a video, and it absolutely blew me away. I thought it was fantastic. And that has turned into the What is Arb video. It's just under 2 minutes long, so it's quite sort of short enough to be attention grabbing, I guess. It's on YouTube now. You can just Google what is arboriculture and it should come up on YouTube. And we are issuing that to all of our members, anyone who wants to use it. It's out there now. And the idea is that it highlights some of the breadth of careers that are available in our sector in hopefully a kind of exciting way.
It really does. It's really buzzy. So for those who are thinking about perhaps they could actually start working with trees, because we're aware we have a really broad audience, tell us about some of those different careers.
Well, we've tried to highlight all of them, and it's difficult, obviously, to try and give them all equal billing, I guess. But I think we have to. Often, I think people think that arboriculture is about arborists and tree surgeons. If you go and speak to members of the public, you know what it's like. You try and explain to someone what you do, they haven't got a clue. When they eventually grasp it's about trees, they'll say, "Oh, you're a tree surgeon." Then you have to say, "Well, no, I do, whatever." So that's a real limitation. People don't realize there's a lot of other careers out there. Often, I think we focused on the three kind of main areas, I'll say, main in inverted commas, the contractor side, the consultancy side, and the tree officer side. And they are the three that probably get the most attention. But then, of course, there's so much other stuff as well. There's the professional membership organisations, there's the charities, the research, nursery work. The one that I think is massively undervalued is our educators, the people working in colleges and universities, arguably the most important of all of us, because they're the ones who are producing the next generation. And I think they've kind of been forgotten about a bit. And that's not to criticise any work that's been done before, because it's difficult to try and keep everyone happy. We have such a broad industry. It's difficult to please everyone all at once, but we really need to do more to focus on those educators and celebrate the work that they're doing.
I totally agree with you about that, because I think they're often really modest people as well. So I'm very privileged to be involved a little bit with Myers Co in the UK, and in a sort of honorary role, and they're fantastic there, but they're modest. And I know more generally, and not speaking about specific people or education facilities, that their facility may not pay for their professional membership, and I'm not sure they're the best paid people in the world. But considering how fundamentally important it is to inspire the next generation, I'm really glad that you're focusing on that, because there is still a problem with young people not coming into the profession at higher education or further education level. And I know that's something that all the professional bodies are working hard to change. I reflected upon our previous conversation in 2020, and one of the things we talked about then was lack of diversity in arboriculture. And I know that you have worked really hard. I know that the London Tree Officers Association had a really detailed, in-depth diversity report recently. And everybody's trying to get more diversity into industry. I wondered if you could report on any trends, if there is any improvement, both in terms of gender, race, sexual orientation, all abilities. What have you observed?
My observation is that we've got a very, very long way to go until we can say that we're a properly diverse sector. I like to think we're an inclusive sector. I hope that we're an inclusive sector. I think we need to identify, and this is some of the work the London Tree Officers Association have done and the Women in Arboriculture group through the Arb Association have done, but trying to identify some of the barriers to why we are so predominantly male and predominantly white. As a white male, I'm probably not the best person to be, finding the solution. We've got to try and facilitate others and support and help and do whatever we can to identify these barriers and how we can overcome them. And we've got a long way to go. I think looking at our own membership numbers, things are getting slightly better on the gender balance, not by very much, but I think we used to have about 10% female members. We've got about 12% now. So
that's good.
It's an increase. But maybe that just means that there's more old white men shuffling off at the other end that's throwing it off. I don't know.
Could be that.
It could be that. But we have got a lot further to go. I think we've talked before about the fact that we almost mask the problem by the fact that there is a disproportionate number of women in leadership roles in arboriculture.
Well, let's just celebrate that for a
Absolutely.
moment. Actually, you've got the wonderful Michelle Ryan as your chair for her second term, which is great. And through Michelle, I know it was her initiative, the Women in Arboriculture group, which had a great day recently, about a year ago, where all women came together, and it was a really big crowd, and we got together and we had some fantastic speakers and we shared experiences, all different areas of arboriculture as well. So that's really good. But 12%, I mean, it's not 12% of the population of women. I mean, I've just come back from Malmo in Sweden for the Tree Association conference, which was amazing. And there were many more women in the audience, way, way above 12%. And I spoke to a wonderful lady in Croatia, and I spoke to a wonderful lady called Miriam in Malmo, and she said there are more women, and she was an climbing arborist. And of course, we've got the world's greatest female climbing arborist. And I wonder what the picture was in New Zealand, because you've just come back from there.
I have just come back from New Zealand. Yeah, I think the picture was probably about the same as it is over here, actually. I mean, so when I say we've got 12% members, that's obviously people who are signing up as members. At conference, for example, I'd say we've got much higher percentage. I haven't got the numbers in front of me, but I think it's much more representative at our events. So we have more of a split. I think, in New Zealand, Arboricultural conference that I was just at, I'd say it's probably quite a similar picture to us. It's predominantly male, but a decent number of women there as well.
Yes, there definitely has been an increase in the number of ladies going to arboricultural events. So I remember when I started, actually, not when I was young, I was probably about 40, 41 when I started going to conferences.
That's still young, Sharon. I'm 42. 41's definitely young. That's young.
It's a baby. Yeah, it's certainly a baby to where I am now. But let's just say my experience of being a female sort of 15 odd years ago at a conference was quite different to how it has been for the last sort of 7 years or so. Let's just say a certain amount of robustness of attitude and clothing was required.
Yeah.
And things have absolutely improved, and it feels really inclusive to me. But we are woefully and regrettably underrepresented by ethnic minorities, and I believe arboriculture is much the poorer because of that. If you're listening to this podcast and you think it's not for you, you don't see yourself reflected by who you see in the industry, please come in and change that, because we must have diversity of thought. Because if we don't have diversity of thought and outlook and opinions, whoever you are, whatever you look like, we are also going to go down in a spiral.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Sharon. Diversity is so important to us. We are the poorer for not having more diversity. And one of those problems, again, I think one of the root causes of that is that people at school, particularly school leavers, don't know that arboriculture is an option for them, is one thing. We should, we mentioned the What is Arb video. That's now going to be sent out to every school in the country to be included in their careers packages. So hopefully start engaging people too. But also, we have got a sector that is still kind of set up so that it's difficult to get into consultancy or management roles without having at least got your tickets for climbing and to have worked in practical tree work. And that puts a lot of people off. In order to get my first sort of proper job, I guess, at Transport for London, I had to have a national diploma. In order to get my national diploma, I had to get my tickets for chainsaw use in a tree and felling a small tree and stuff. I was terrible at tree work. I'd be a hell of a lot worse now. But I had to demonstrate that I could use a chainsaw in a tree before I could get my national diploma and before I could get a job in tree management. And for anybody who doesn't think that climbing a tree with a chainsaw is for them, whether it's just because they, maybe they're not able to, or maybe they just don't like chainsaws, or they don't like heights, at the moment, we're also keeping a lot of those people out. So to achieve greater diversity across the board, we really need to take a good look at how we are training people up to come into the sector, and to break down that myth that, oh, if you're going to be a tree manager, you need to have actually done, pollarding or reduction work or something.
Very, very good point. Well, I can tell you that I've never held a chainsaw because I'm too scared. I'm rubbish. I'm clumsy. I'm disorganised. I happen to have done some practical conservation work as a volunteer. That was not my route. My route was through a general sort of landscape degree and then going on to do other qualifications. So it's absolutely not the case now, but I am concerned about the lack of training. But happily, there are free training courses now, aren't they? Just been issued by the government. Could you tell us about those, please?
Yes, so the government a couple of years ago issued the Forestry Skills Training Fund, I think it was called, and then they expanded it to include arboriculture. We did a little bit of sort of lobbying behind the scenes to say that if you want to include arboriculture, you can't just call it the Forestry Training Skills, because we cannot just be included under the forestry umbrella. That's not helpful to anyone. So they changed the name of the fund, which was quite exciting. It's now the Forestry and Arboriculture Training Fund. And yes, it makes funding available for people to study arboriculture. I believe all of the funding was committed and snapped up within about 48 hours of it going live, I think I'm correct in saying. So it went very quickly, but that's a good thing, because hopefully that'll inspire DEFRA and the government to do another round of it, maybe with more funding available, because there is such appetite out there.
That's really good news. I didn't know that it went so quickly, like the veritable hot cake.
Yeah, very quickly.
So reflecting on what we talked about before, which was over 3 years ago, you raised a really important issue of green equity. And my observation is that there have been an increasing amount and use of eye tree studies looking at all of the metrics to do with well-being and social deprivation and canopy cover. And I've come across some really, really good studies. Like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I tuned into a Davy Tree webinar with Andy Tipping from Barnet about the work that he's done as a local authority and identifying hot spots where we need to plant trees. So I think that things are moving forward in a better way. But what's your opinion?
I think that things definitely are moving forward. I think there's more awareness now of green equity, or tree equity as it's sometimes being called. It's a really, really important issue. It's one that, as you know, we wanted to put at the heart of our conference in 2020, which we then had to cancel or move online because of COVID. So we did have some really good sessions about green equity and green gentrification as well at our conference in Loughborough in 2022. So it's something we're talking about. It's something that other organisations are getting involved in as well, which is great. My concern is that there's a risk of kind of dumbing down green equity to the point where we just look at planting trees in deprived areas and thinking, well, that'll fix it. And we've tried that before and it doesn't work. And if you look at the work of people like Lorien Nesbitt, who I've mentioned several times in podcasts like this and various interviews, because I think some of that research is just fantastic. It's almost green inequity is a symptom rather than a cause. It's about a lack of representation on decision-making bodies. It's a lack of community engagement. It's a lack of properly working with people to find out what they want, rather than having, wealthier people coming in saying, well, what you need is trees, because trees are good for you. So we're going to plant a load of trees. And if we do that, then that's going to fix stuff for you. It's about what another great friend of the association, Rob Northrop, talks about social values. So we've got to find out people's social values, what's important to them, and what they're interested in and what they care about, and how trees can help address that, and then get them involved at the sort of grassroots level. Because just mapping areas of deprivation, identifying that canopy cover is often lower there, and then just going in to chuck a load of trees in the ground is not fixing green inequity. It is just not necessarily going to help.
Is it the new colonialism? I can't say that again. I'm going to say that word again.
I think it
can I say that again? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I got to laugh at. Is that the new colonialism? I can't say it. But keep it in just as it is. John, I can't say it, but it's a really serious point. Is it a undiverse group of people in power making decisions saying this is what you need to make you happy?
To be honest, the control room prefers colonialism, but you're all right, go on.
And is it insensitive because of that?
I think there's a risk that it can turn into that. And I'm not saying that's what's happening. And there is some great work being done, definitely. I just think there is a risk of bringing it down to its lowest common denominator of saying, here is deprivation, here is no green space. Let's go in and plant a load of trees because that's good for the people who live there. And what is good or what is desirable is very much a matter of perception and experience. And my perception of how an area should look is not necessarily more important than the perception of the people who live there and actually use that space. And what I think looks nice isn't necessarily what they might think looks nice. So again, it comes back to this diversity of opinion. We need to, if we actually want to achieve some form of green equity, then we need to do it through proper engagement and representation. We need to look at the decision-making groups, the boards who are deciding where these trees go, and seeing whether those boards and those groups are actually diverse and representative of all sections of society. Because if they're not, then I think we risk just imposing what we think is nice on other people, and that's just not going to work out very well.
Well, if you really want to go out on a walk, or if you're stuck on a cruise liner in New York, and if it's people we can't see while in this virtual reality, you may as well download an episode of Our Tree Lady Talks.
So science gives us a starting block, doesn't it? It can identify where there are gaps and you can see the correlation. But then we have to speak to people's hearts and minds. We have to understand what's important to them, how they live and how they want their area to be. Not just those who would attend a meeting, but by getting out there with workshops. And I know there's some wonderful work by NGOs and some local authorities on that engagement. So it's evolving all the time, isn't it? 3 years ago, we were talking about this and thinking this is a good way forward, and it is. But another layer of the most important thing is let's make it work for the folks who live there, not just what it looks like or functions as an ecosystem service. Absolutely brilliant. One of the things I've observed also since your tenure is the success of the Arboricultural Association webinars. And one of the things I absolutely love about those is that you've opened it up literally to the world. Tell us who's attending.
We have had lots of interest in the webinars, which is absolutely fantastic. We're having people attending from all over the world. I think we've had more than 150 countries watching in total. We regularly have 6 continents watching at the same time. I think there's been about 25,000 people now watching live across the, whatever it is, 70 odd webinars that we've done. And yeah, it kind of, I wouldn't say it happened entirely by mistake. You were involved in one of the very, very first ones we did, in fact, Sharon. I know you were invited very early on.
Thank you.
Obviously, COVID hit. We knew that people wouldn't be able to get out there and do the stuff that they normally did. So we just tried to put something on that would be interesting to them. And obviously, every different organisation reacted in a different way. Our approach was that we wanted to make them free to everyone to begin with. That was the main thing, really. So it was accessible to anybody. We put them on in the evening and did them quite deliberately. Well, I say deliberately relaxed because that lets me get away with just being a bit of a rubbish host because I can just kind of sit back and not have to take it too seriously. But we wanted to make it almost more like a TV show that people would watch and enjoy. So it's informative, but sort of entertaining as well was the idea. And we've been very lucky to have a large number of fantastic speakers contributing over the last couple of years. And we're just starting the new series. This doesn't date well on a podcast, does it? But as we're speaking, we're starting the new series tonight. And that's going to be running through until the end of February. And we've got some great speakers lined up for that.
And today is the 22nd of November. It's Ted Green, MBE, star of Tree Lady Talks a few weeks ago. But one of the things I really love about the webinars, and particularly during lockdowns, is all the hi, I'm from New York, or hi, I'm in Bolton, or hi, I'm in Sydney, Australia, and the sort of chat going along the presentation, it makes you feel like you belong. And it also brings a real global perspective. And you've had many international speakers on the webinars, which has opened our minds to different ways of seeing and different ways of doing in arboriculture. What are some of the takeaways from these more international points of view that have really struck a chord with you?
Well, I'll say one thing I say just before I answer that question is that the chat is a really important part of it. And that engagement between people is really quite special, actually. And it never ceases to excite me to look at the chat, and you'll see maybe a presenter will be talking about, I don't know, footway damage caused by trees. And in the chat, someone will say, oh, well, I'm in Buenos Aires and this is how we deal with this. And then someone will say, well, I work in Munich and we do it this way. And then someone will say, well, I'm in Uganda and this is how we do it. And that real-time interaction of people all over the world, I don't think you get anywhere else. You know, it's quite unique. I certainly haven't seen anything quite like it. And that is just so exciting. And so many working relationships have been built from it as well. I know there's lots of people who've spoken and chatted through the webinars and then have gone off and done collaborative projects or whatever it might be. So that chat is such a great part of it all. And that's kind of, in some ways, it's as important as the presentations themselves in a way. So that's really good. In terms of takeaways from it, it's the same thing I've taken from the webinars as I've taken from my various international travels. I'm very fortunate to get to travel around the place for the last few years and meet lots of people who do what we do and who work in different parts of arboriculture and tree care. And the thing that always strikes me is that we all have exactly the same problems. Everywhere in the world, we've got exactly the same problems. And where I suppose the interesting bit is that we have found different ways of dealing with those problems. And that's really where we can learn from each other, is in that space where we talk about how we've overcome the issues we've faced. Because I will go out and I will give a talk at a conference, wherever it may be in the world, and I'll talk about challenges that we have in UK arboriculture. And inevitably, the audience will be nodding away because they have exactly the same problems as we have. So that, for me, really is the big takeaway. We're all facing the same things. And I think what the webinars do, and other organizations offer this kind of forum as well, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's someone out there who's going to have been dealt with a similar problem to the one you're facing. And this is why I think the London Tree Officers Association is such a special organisation. And, we've done a lot of work over the years with the LTOA. That is just an incredible forum for tree officers to share ideas and experiences about how they deal with stuff. And I think the webinar is almost a scaled up, I suppose, version of that. It's a home for all sorts of people to come and share their experiences and talk about how they've overcome the difficulties they've faced.
I like the word you use there, home, because that's how it makes you feel. And I think that sense of belonging is so important, because many of us are quite isolated in the work that we do. There are generally one or two or three local authority tree officers. Maybe you're just on your own. Lots of sole practitioners as consultants. Tree surgery gangs tend to be quite small and fairly fluid. And you can feel quite isolated. So you go there and you think, oh, yes, I'm with my mates. And it kind of relaxes you. And there is a sense of fun. So these are open to everybody.
Yeah, trees.org.uk.
On the events section. So do check those out.
Something also I think quite interesting has happened with the webinars, when we talk about it being a home and a community and everything, which is that when people sign up or decide to be members of the Arboricultural Association again, when they renew their membership of the association, we often sort of ask them what they like and what they don't like and try and get some feedback. And in the last couple of years, one of the main things that people have referenced that they like is the webinars. And quite a lot of people have said things like, oh, it's worth the price of membership alone, the webinars, that sort of thing. Now, I find that really interesting, because obviously the webinars are free. You don't have to be a member to watch the webinars, and they know this. And I think what they kind of mean by that is the webinars are worth the price of the membership alone, because they can kind of see almost where their money's going. They can see that we are trying to create this community of tree lovers and tree professionals around the world. And we're trying to move away, I guess, from a that kind of traditional transactional relationship. And, you give money, you get stuff. What people are starting to do now is that they are giving money because they're buying into something they believe in, and they're supporting this community and this global community. And through the webinars particularly, we are hopefully giving access to some of the best speakers in the world, to people who ordinarily wouldn't have got to see them. And we're sort of bringing them straight to their homes. So I think I'm hoping that arboriculture as a whole is moving to a more welcoming, engaging, open sector. And there's many ways we're doing that. One, of course, is this podcast, obviously, and one is our webinars and lots of other people doing other things. But it does give me hope that we're moving in the right direction.
I agree. I think there's a palpable sense of excitement around the world for arboriculture. And now for a commercial break. South Oxfordshire District Council are looking for a senior tree officer. This is a great opportunity to work in a beautiful part of the country. They're offering a really good salary, so check out the job advert at South Oxfordshire District Council's vacancies page. And what makes you excited at the moment about arboriculture? What do you think, this is, apart from the webinars and this global community, is there anything in particular you think, wow, that's really moving in the right direction?
I think that we're starting to get there in terms of recognition. We've got an awful lot further to go, but we are starting to make inroads into actually telling people about arboriculture. And I guess the schools work that we're doing, and again, others are doing this. This isn't like an advert for the Arbor Association. Lots of people are working on this, but we're doing a lot of stuff with schools at the moment to go in, to do careers days, to tell school leavers, particularly the school leaving age children, that arboriculture is out there, because they're never going to join arboriculture if they don't know that it's a career for them. It's as simple as that. And then we're producing more materials that we can take into schools. We've obviously got the What is Our video, various other things. And then we're now encouraging our members and anyone else, you haven't got to be a member, but we're saying to people, if you want to go to a local careers event, if you want to go and speak at your local school or your children's school or whatever, then let us know. We're then sending them out a box of materials so they can take it along and do a little display and give stuff away. And I think this is how we are going to start changing stuff. And I really hope that there will be arboriculturalists in the future, 10, 15, 20 years time, who have decided to make arboriculture their career off the back of having heard it in school for the first time. And I think that the work that lots of organisations are doing is helping to change that. We now have regular meetings with the Department for Work and Pensions, Department for Education, to make sure that arboriculture is listed on the potential careers for careers advisors, for example. So up until very recently, if you were at school talking to your careers advisor saying, I'd like to work with trees, I'm interested in the environment, if you were lucky, you might get told about forestry. You'd probably be told about horticulture. You certainly wouldn't be told about arboriculture because the careers advisors didn't know about it. Now, all the materials we're producing are being sent to the careers advisors so that they do know it's an option. And, with sort of a bit of a mass approach to really every school across the country to try and make sure that they are aware that this is an option. And I think that's probably the thing that gives me the most hope. And it's the thing that I probably won't see the results of in my career. It's a bit like looking after trees, isn't it? We spend a lot of time and effort and money on trees we know we'll never see the benefit of. And it's a similar thing to cultivating the next generation of arboriculturalists, but I think it will bear fruit.
I think it will bear fruit, actually, quite quickly. And I had a brilliant tip. I was speaking to Simon Burville a couple of weeks ago of Woodland Heritage. It was a really fascinating interview. And he's also a really high-end furniture maker. And he showed me some coasters just made of slices of ash. And he'd written on the back of each coaster the age of the tree. And of course, we know that wood is a beautiful material to touch, and we've got the growth rings there. I said, if everybody who cares about trees and arboriculture or forestry went into a school with a slice of wood with the age on the back, how simple, or a series of coasters, they're always going to be there in the classroom. They've got a number written on the back. What's this? The child might ask. And it starts a conversation. So a little tip there for the Arboricultural Association and anybody listening, taking some slices of wood that are sanded down and safe to touch and light and easy to take in a bag, There you go, school. Have half a dozen of those.
No, that's
and
brilliant.
say what the species is. Ash, 37 years old. Oak, 15 years old, etc., etc.
And that sort of thing is a really good idea, because trees are a really easy sell. Like, I think we forget sometimes, trees are really cool. And that's one of the things we're always trying to push to people. None of us really got into this because of carbon sequestration or rainfall interception or whatever it is. We got into arboriculture because trees are bloody brilliant and they're so cool. And we forget sometimes, and it is a very easy thing to sell to people and to win people over on, and children particularly, but anyone of any age can be interested and engaged in trees. And we've got that knowledge. We've just got to communicate it and then make sure that off the back of that, they know that there's a career in arboriculture as well.
And when you think about how many books, children's books and TV programs and films are written about trees as a backdrop, I could list off a whole realm of, the ideology of a tree being magical and special is there in literature and it's there in the arts. Now, the idea of buildings being special and magical, of course, that's important. Or other professions, engineering, yes, they're great professions. There aren't quite so many children's books written about them. So we need to capitalise on the arts and show that, hey, you can actually do this. So there's a message out there for any arboriculturalists who are budding writers for children. Actually take that story one step further and have a character who is a tree expert. And I think we spoke before, I spoke on another podcast about get somebody, a tree expert on a soap opera or something like that, just as a character. So there's lots and lots to be done. That's really good. Green Blue Urban. Well, I've loved working alongside this company for many, many years. They really care about what they do. They're actually established in 1992 and they provide exceptional expertise in the planning, design and installation of green and blue infrastructure in the urban landscape. With headquarters in the south of England, Green Blue are proud to support on-site manufacturing using 100% recycled and recyclable materials that enable shorter lead times, promoting the circular economy and reducing their carbon footprint. They work alongside landscape architects, urban designers and planners with the renowned Arbor system, which brings together the key elements of successful tree pit design and simplifies the planning and installation process. Landscape professionals can combine SUDs, root management, structural soil components, aeration, irrigation, and choose an appropriate above-ground surface grill and vertical guard in a single package. Assisting with the design of healthier urban spaces in harmony with nature. Continued innovation, research and development has enabled Green Blue Urban to become a successful global leader with unrivaled assistance to support all landscaping needs, creating healthier urban spaces in harmony with nature. Well, I've seen in action how good their products are, and I've been on many a walking tour which shows how well trees are developed with good root space. We know it really matters, doesn't it? It's not just what you choose and where you choose, but it's how you plant it and look after it. And we are so grateful to Green Blue Urban because they're one of our sponsors for our forthcoming Trees, Planning and Construction Conference. Listen to the end of the podcast for more information on that. Tickets are selling fast. What doesn't excite you about arboriculture? What do you think? This is still going on.
Well, in some ways, it's the same as what pleases me. What pleases me is we are getting higher recognition for arboriculture, but what frustrates me is we're still not quite there yet. A bit like you've just said, trees have been high on the agenda politically, publicly for quite a long time now. The general election of 2019 is one I always remember because that's when all the political parties were kind of outbidding each other to plant more and more trees. And you won't find a politician who says they don't care about trees. Everyone says they love trees. But for some reason, that just hasn't translated to tree care. Everyone's talking about how great trees are, and you still don't necessarily hear anything about the entire sector that's responsible for those trees. That, I think, is probably my greatest frustration. The number of people you talk to about, I don't know, trees in streets or in parks, and they genuinely think the trees have just grown there by themselves. They haven't given any consideration to the fact they might actually have been, selected and propagated and planted and cared for and inspected and pruned and everything for over so many years. So I guess my frustration is there is still a total focus on the 5 or 10 minutes where we stick the tree in the ground, and still not enough attention paid to the 5 or 6 years before that and the 100 or 200 years after that. It's just that time when we put the tree in the ground and then everyone walks away feeling happy with themselves. And I'm not sure how we cut through that as a problem. We've been trying for a while and we don't seem to have got there, but everyone's talking about trees. Very few people are still talking about tree care.
And taking that point further, Keith Saker of Bartram Trees often makes a very good point, so I won't say it's my idea, it's his. People talk about tree planting figures. Oh, look, we've planted, 1 million trees. I'm interested in tree establishment figures 5 years on. That's a real target.
Well, I'll give a little plug, and I'm biased here because I wrote the strategy, but a little plug for the Stonehouse Community Arboretum and the Stonehouse Community Arboretum Management Plan that was signed up to by Stonehouse Town Council, which is my hometown and where the Arb Association is based. And in there, one of the targets adopted is a tree establishment target. The target is that 95% of trees planted will be alive 3 years after planting. And whilst those figures in themselves are kind of arbitrary, the idea is that it doesn't matter if you plant 5 trees or 10,000 trees. It's about quality and it's about keeping them alive. And as far as I'm aware, I'm sure one of your listeners will be able to correct me, but I think that's one of the first actual adopted tree establishment targets, which doesn't have any mention of tree numbers in it at all.
Well done. That's absolutely amazing. Just hold on a moment. Listeners will know of Noel, who's so busy behind the scenes doing all the things, but Noel knows John a little bit, and it's about time we had Noel back on the podcast. It's Noel's question of the week.
Yes, it's me, folks. I'm here. I'm finally here. Hi, John.
Hi, Noel. How you doing?
I'm doing good, John, and all the better for CEOing you, if you know what I mean. John, I'll be honest with you. I think my question's a bit controversial, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Given the way that society has become, let's be honest, you can order anything from a hairpin to a car on the internet. You'll probably buy a pyramid, as far as I know. Do you not think that the people you're actually trying to get into the industry, which is largely outside, are going to look at it and say, do you know what? It's raining, it's cold. I could be inside not doing that. I could just be doing database stuff. Why would I want to go outside and do that in these freezing, horrible conditions? I just can't be asked. Oh, my Uber's turned up.
Well, there is a risk, I think, as people have a more sedentary lifestyle, that they're not going to want to go out as much. However, I would say that, what COVID showed us was the increased appreciation of green spaces, people getting out for their health, for their well-being, and the importance of having good quality green space near them. Are we going to end up in a world where people don't really want to leave the house? I hope not. I hope that maybe we're actually going to move into a world where people start valuing the natural world a bit more and valuing green space and start fighting for their access to green space, realizing that it's probably better to be outdoors than indoors on the whole. And there's many things to learn and enjoy and see and do out there. And if we can persuade people that they should be getting outdoors and they should be, as Shayo said, touching trees, then we will have succeeded.
Yeah, you will have done. And I want to wish you all the best with that. It's a very, very difficult thing, and I wonder whether actually the recruiting process, which continually evolves, is actually needing to evolve a bit quicker and perhaps get people into the industry in a different way, because there's loads and loads of huge targets and there's going to be nobody around to actually fulfill the targets because they won't be in the industry.
Yeah, it is very difficult and it is very frustrating. I think maybe, certainly in my experience, when I started in arboriculture and I saw people going out to promote arboriculture as a career, we as a sector tended to go to land-based colleges and tell people who'd already decided they wanted to do a land-based industry that they should do arboriculture. So we were almost trying to, tease people away from horticulture or forestry and say you should do arb instead. And actually what we need to be doing is engaging with all age groups right from the beginning, so that as children are growing up, and as Sharon said, it should be on TV shows and cartoons, whatever else, in the same way as children are aware that there are careers as a builder or a hairdresser or an astronaut or a fire person or whatever it may be, that they also know there's a career in tree care. And that's the point we need to kind of get to. And hopefully downstream from that, when they're looking to pick their careers, they'll be moving into arboriculture. But we need to get them as early as we can.
Reasoned, faceted, well thought out and balanced. And that's just me. And that was...
Noel's question of the week.
And finally, John, what is your dream scenario?
My dream scenario is one in which arboriculture is as well known as all of the other professions that are out there for people to do. And we have loads and loads and loads of people, whether it's coming out of school or career changes or whatever it may be, who are choosing arboriculture as the profession for them. And that as a result, we are respected as a profession and understood as a profession as we deserve to be, because as ever, if we want to have healthy trees, we really do need to have a healthy arboricultural profession, and that is what we all need to be working towards. So my dream scenario is one in which arboriculture is known about, appreciated, understood and valued.
Thank you so much, John Parker, CEO of the Arboricultural Association and webinar legend. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Sharon. My pleasure.
Oh, I love talking to John. It just makes you realise just how exciting arboriculture is and how much there is to do. Actually, I saw John the other night at the London Tree and Woodland Awards. On the way there, I was walking through the streets of London from a construction site, and I met a homeless gentleman, and we got talking. He said, one of the most difficult things about being homeless is not being seen and not being heard. So here he is. Thank you, and I hope you're safe.
I am the passerby. I never saw a wild thing feel sorry for itself. A small bird will drop frozen dead from a bough without ever having felt sorry for itself.
And you've got another poem, haven't you, your favourite?
Yeah. I'm continuously composing these carefully choreographed creations. Every move and manoeuvre lead to want, desires, temptations. Some find elation at long last, states of euphoria to us were never known. Sudden spirals of desperation, so desperate not to be shown. Metaphorically, you will fly far and high, further and faster as you delve deeper into that blue night sky. But beware of pathological hopes and dreams that long to serve but oneself. No consideration of society's forgotten children, only concern with one's well.
Trees, planning and construction. Is it really working? Do you feel isolated? Well, this conference plans to change that. We're here at BS 5837 Speed Briefing. Biodiversity net gain. What does it mean for trees? And trees and planning law. Are you up to date? Sarah Dodd will tell us. Hear from keynote speaker Keith Saker and Jeremy Barrell. We'll hear the views of London Tree Officer John Ryan on what works well and ideas for the future, and a panel of experts, a planning consultant, highway engineer, demolition contractor and building contractor, and I will be saying what works for me. All this and outdoor demonstrations on the 20th of February 2024 here at Braxted Park. And thanks to our headline sponsors, Barcham Trees, we're offering cut price tickets for tree officers. See us at Sharon Hosegood Associates /training or Eventbrite Trees, Planning and Construction.